We have played 10 matches so far in our journey of this marathon, and we have reached our finale. This is the final day of our marathon. As they say, all good things come to an end, but the good things also start, and tomorrow is the start of the extravaganza, the carnival, the madness, the agony, the ecstasy, and we will see matches happen and finish by the barest of margins. Why I'm saying that? You can see in my background where have I reached. I have taken an invisible flight, and I am now down in the Ahmedabad Stadium, Narendra Modi Stadium. You can see the English and the New Zealand flag behind me because I couldn't wait for the start of the World Cup. Welcome to the direct hit and the fifth umpire. We have been previewing the team since the last 9 days. Today are the champions for 5 times in this event and utter dominance in the past few editions. They have been mentioned every time in the last 9 shows, and they will be looking to hit a sixer out of the ground of 6 championships. That is Australia. Preetham, last show today, and just before I go to you, thank you to everyone who's tuned in so far to the marathon. Today is the final day, and yeah, Preetham, now you can take over. It's been a quite a ride.
Absolutely. I think you have once again, it's already 1 minute and 50 seconds into the live show, and you have given each and every pointers boxes tick in terms of the introduction. Welcome everybody in terms of the final day of the marathon once again. And before I thank each and every one, definitely we'll thank them at the end of the show. But it is none other than Australia. The men in yellow, they are always powerhouse. Wherever they go, whichever ground they face, whatever team they take. They are always a powerhouse, and this time as well, they're ready. As Pat Cummings said, he's a new captain in terms of white ball format, so it's going to be a new challenge for him. But his 14 other men are always ready. I think that the stage is set for them. They will kickstart tomorrow. I'm not sure, not tomorrow. They will kickstart against India on the 8th, and let's get the things rolling. We have a guest. Absolutely, everyone must be guessing that. We have guests this time as well, and we will definitely bring them on the stage. It is none other than all the way from Australia. So thank you very much to the guests for staying awake for us. It's probably late night out here for him, but we will definitely bring him out. It's welcoming Jack. Welcome to the show, Jack. It's a privilege for you to give us at least 45 to an hour time. How does it feel to be part of the marathon?
Feels good, guys. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here to speak cricket with you guys. For what's going to be an exciting World Cup. Yeah, it's great to be a part of the marathon, as you said. And I'm eagerly waiting to discuss all about Australia and their chances of potentially winning their 6th title. So it's going to be great fun nonetheless.
Yeah, and see, I want to start off by saying you guys have got already 5 World Cups. Let us win some as well. All of the nations are also saying that enough is enough. But jokes apart, Preetham, we can just have a quick sneak peek into the team that the selectors have picked. Jack was saying backstage that the selectors are copping a bit of a stick, and I'm back. I think, yeah, I went there for a little bit. So, Jack, overall thoughts on the team? Just an overall view that the team has been picked up for the World Cup.
Overall, the squad looks pretty good. You know, you've got experience there in one-day cricket. You've also got former World Cup winners who were a part of the 2015 squad that won. You know, David Warner, Glenn Maxwell, Cummins, Stark, and Hazelwood, and Mitchell Marsh. Whereas the others played in the last World Cup or played in their first World Cup. So you've got that blend of experience and seniority in the squad. It's a typical Australian one-day World Cup squad. And it's a pretty strong squad, despite a few hurdles and setbacks over the last few weeks in South Africa and in India. But overall, it's a pretty good squad.
Absolutely. And Jack, we were discussing this. I asked the yesterday's guest as well this question, and I think you will be the best man to answer this question. That is, do you think, looking into this 15-man squad, and we all, like, you already have a picture in your eyes in front of the playing 11 as well, what could come up was against India as well? Do you think the top four, which is Warner, Marsh, Marnus, and Steve Smith. Do you think Australia is, in terms of the batting, are too much reliant on the top four? Because if we go to number five, you have Maxwell, Green, and then Kerry, who are kind of a player, a hit and miss kind of a player. So do you think you guys are too much reliant on your top four?
Well, obviously they're big players, of course. Warner and Smith and Marsh and Labuschagne are very good batters, and the prolific run scorers, and all of them are good players. So yes, we may be relying on them a lot in this World Cup. And as you said, once you get down to the middle to lower order, there's not much in terms of support. Cameron Green's a bit up and down at the moment with his batting. It was good to get a half century from him in the game against Pakistan in the warm-up yesterday. Alex Carey, his form's dipped a little bit in one-day cricket. Marcus Stoinis hasn't really produced much with the bat in his career for Australia. Glenn Maxwell, we know, he's a match winner. He scored a good 77 yesterday against Pakistan in the warm-up match. So, yes, the top four will have to score majority of the runs and get in and get set and convert the starts. That's been the problem that Australia's had. Not in the little bit of the losing streak that they had when they lost 5 games in a row, but even before that's a longer problem as well, is that their batting tends to struggle at times, and they do have batting collapses. So hopefully they can rectify that. But Back to your original point that you made earlier, yes, the top four will be relied on heavily in this World Cup if Australia are going to have success, either batting first or chasing.
All right. And looking into one of the, we have received our first comment of the day. That is, where is Travis Head? Like, we know he's injured, but you will be the best man to answer this. Is that, when is he expected to return?
Well, he's expected to return towards the back end of the tournament. So we're talking about the semi-final stage, because he had a fractured hand. It takes a long time. It takes around about 6 weeks or something like that for it to heal, which he picked up in South Africa, which is a few weeks ago now. So he will be back at the latter parts of the tournament. If Australia do qualify for the semi-finals, he will come back in, because they do rate Travis Head highly. And we've seen the remarkable rise of him in Test cricket over the last few months into a year or so. He's a very important player for this Australian team. And it was a bit of bad luck that he got that injury, but it happens. But that's why they've retained him in the squad, because they want him for the latter stage. So he'll be back for the semi-finals if all goes well in his recovery.
So you're saying that he will definitely be back by the knockout stage. So do you think that Australia are keeping him just for the knockouts? And looking into the group stage, throughout the group stage, you're going to play with 14 men, if you look realistically. So is that a good choice to be made by the management, according to you?
Well, you would like all 15 to be fit and available in an ideal world. Then that's the right way to go.
Is there a reserve available? A reserve?
Well, I don't know with batting reserves. I don't think Australia's named any reserves for batting. But yeah, they want Travis Head to be a part of this World Cup. So that's why they took it's a risk. It's a risk. But we've got a good replacement of Mitchell Marsh, who is in good touch himself. He'll open with Warner and, put a good partnership there. But with Travis Head, he's a dangerous player. He can change games like that in a matter of minutes, as we've seen. So It is a bit of a risk, but the selectors have backed the medical staff and what they've said, their advice, and say he'll be right for the back end of the tournament. So it is a bit of a risk. So that's why they didn't choose Ashton Agar, because they don't want 2 injured players in the squad, because essentially then you're 2 players less in the squad, are you? So you're not going to carry 2 injured players around. That's why they dropped Ashnagha for that second spin option. So it is a bit of a risk, but he can be a dangerous player, and especially in a knockout like a semi-final. He can change a game just like that. So that's why they've kept him in the side. But in an ideal world, you would like 15 to be available.
Yeah, just one
but
last
that's just
question.
the way it is.
Yeah. So just one question before we go on to the next one. Do you think Smith and Marnus Labuschagne in the middle overs is a setback for Australia? Because if they get a good start, these two are similar players, the similar kind of players, and they play at a similar tempo. None of them is ultra aggressive. So is that gonna backfire for Australia?
Well, they batted together in the warm-up match yesterday against Pakistan. They batted okay with each other. They put on 50 plus for that partnership. And, Smith and Labuschagne, yes, they are similar type players. And you would want someone to come in and, be aggressive and put pressure back onto the bowlers. But we've seen from Smith, we saw in the Big Bash last season for the Sydney Sixers, he went ballistic. So he does have that aggressive approach in him. Marnus is starting to branch out into that. And we've seen that in South Africa recently. And we've seen that against India at times in the recent ODI series before this World Cup. Obviously, both of them will provide stability in the batting. If Australia collapse, if they lose Warner and Marsh, for example, they're 2 down for nothing, and Smith and Labuschagne come in and rebuild the innings, I think that can be an advantage for Australia. But yes, it can be a hindrance at the same time as well if you want to accelerate, especially when you're setting the total and you want to put the foot down and get to that 350 plus score or whatever. But in a run chase, I think it will be an advantage for Australia to have those two at the crease because they're very good. And they love batting with each other. So Australia can change it up a bit. They can separate them. They can bat Marnus down the order if they need a bit of stability. If they do have a real bad batting collapse, they can put him down and then they can put like a Stoinis or a Maxwell up or something like that. So be interesting to see what they do. But I think they'll bat at 3 and 4 respectively. And I think Australia would want that same batting lineup, especially for the first game against India. And then whatever happens after that, they'll make some changes, as you do in cricket.
All right, no worries with that. And then you have a lot of fan followers. Mr. Sanjay says that welcome to the show, Jack. Sending love all the way from India and Kolkata. So you already have a lot of people out here. We move on to the history of Australian cricket. Aryan, once you're back, we will hand it over to you. Aryan, go for the histories for Australia.
Yeah, so Jack, you have a really proud history. Which was your favorite year, and which year were you kind of disappointed on missing out? I mean, not the champion ones, obviously, but your favorite and your not so favorite years for Australia in the last 5 World Cup editions.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a difficult question. It's like choosing your favorite child. It's very hard to choose. We've been so lucky to witness many great World Cups over the journey with Australian cricket. My favourite run will have to be 2015. Being in Australia, it was a great win by the lads. 2015 for me will have to be the favourite one. I think 2011 would have to be the disappointing one. I remember watching that, and Australia, doing okay up until the quarterfinal, and then they lost, and that was the end of that. So probably 2011 was disappointing. 2015 was probably my favourite. 2003 was good. 2007 was good. 2019, I watched that semi-final against England. That was hard to watch. So probably I'll have to put in 2019 and 2011 as the ones that were disappointing. But 2015 for me is definitely up there from a personal point.
All right. So I think it isn't that obvious because 2011, 2019 are the 2 years you haven't been champions, and that is the reason why.
Yes, it's fairly obvious because we didn't win. All the others were pretty good because we won.
Absolutely. And looking into 2015, I would reflect back to that one moment. Throughout at least the last 24 hours until that first ball, the whole media was talking about what would Brendan McCullum do to Mitchell Stark, and you bring an in-swing, a right and off stump, and that celebration. Did you? What was your reaction? As you were saying, fans' reaction. What was your reaction, real time, when you saw that beauty going past off stump?
It was a glorious sight, I could tell you that. Watching that final, seeing Mitchell Stark do what he does best, it's a brilliant ball to start a World Cup final. Getting rid of Brendan McCullum for a golden duck is a wonderful sight. Seeing his stumps getting cartwheeled out of the ground, and the MCG over 100,000 people cheering, just really set the tone for that final, really. And it was, Australia's final to lose, really, after that moment. It changed the game. It really did. And New Zealand, in their first World Cup final, they bit shell-shocked. That's understandable. And Australia just, demolished them. So it was a wonderful feeling. And everyone still talks about it. Whenever you hear Australian people talk about that moment at the MCG in that World Cup final, everyone mentions it and say it's probably one of their best moments of that game. There were so many great moments, but that one was one of them. And certainly for me, Mitchell Stark, that's why he's so dangerous. And he's going to be like that again in this World Cup for Australia if he gets it right. But going back to your question, it was one of those iconic World Cup moments which people will talk about for a very long time.
All right. Aryan, anything for you before we move on?
No, we can move on. I was just about to bring the comment up which came down by you. So Jack, I'll lay out the rules for you today. So if you have been following our marathon, we're having 3 trivia questions for every guest of ours. So far, everybody has found it really engaging. Hope you do too. And you will get 2 shots and 1 question. After 1 answer, you'll get a 10-second buffer to go for the second one. And in that meantime, we'll give the audience the chance to put in their word as well of what the answer could be. So, Pritam, I think we can bring the first question up for Jack.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Jack, if you cast your memory back to 2007, there was a brilliant semi-final that you guys won pretty easily. But who was the man of the match of that semi-final? What would be your answer?
Testing one. 2007 semi-final. Yes, it was a good semi-final against South Africa in 2007. Pretty close in the end. There was some standout performances. I'm just trying to think. It was a pretty good team that Australia had, a pretty good squad, good players.
No issues with that. You can take your time.
Obviously you had Gilchrist, you had Hayden, you had Ponting, you had Martin. No, sorry, not Damien Martin because he retired. You had Andrew Simons, you had Glenn McGrath, you had Nathan Bracken in there, you had Michael Hussey, you had Shane Watson as well.
So I just need. I did not have the squad. No worries with that. But I just need at least 2 guesses. We have already received the answers. Some of them are correct. So we would hand it over to you first to get your opportunity to answer.
Well,
make your 2 guesses.
Okay. I'm just trying to think. All right. Well, I'm going to get out on a limb here. Just complete guess because I can't really remember, but I'm sure when I hear the answer, then it will click. I'm going to go with one of the batters. I think. Probably going to go with Michael Hussey as a guess. Okay. Not entirely convinced, but
no worries with that.
For the purposes of this, as a guess, I'm going to go with Michael Hussey.
Okay, so Michael Hussey, you have said, and even Ronit says Michael Hussey. Unfortunately, both of you are correct. Incorrect, I'm sorry. So the second one, I'll give you 3 guesses with 3 options, and you can choose from there, making things easier for you. Nathan Bracken, Glenn McGrath, and Andrew Simons.
All right. Now that's interesting. I think something's clicked. Well, all of them were pretty good players. Nathan Bracken, Glenn McGrath, and obviously Andrew Simons. We all know what he did in 2003 in that game against Pakistan when he got that 100. Yeah. Well, I can't remember if Australia were bowling, South Africa were chasing, then it would have been a bowler there.
South Africa probably were chasing, and
Right.
if
So that narrows it down.
okay, I'll make it more easier. Do you want one last opportunity? I'll remove Andrew Simon from the options.
Okay, so yes, my theory was right. So it has to be a bowler if South Africa would chase and Australia won by close margin. Oh, right. Well, the obvious answer would be Glenn McGrath. Everyone would say Glenn McGrath. But I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go with Nathan Bracken.
So Nathan Bracken is your second and final answer. I think, Jack, being an Australian, you would be gutted that you went not with your guts, but with the other. It is none other than Glenn McGrath. He was
went with Pidge. I should have went with Pidge.
He was also the highest wicket taker, as Gopal says. So Deepu was the first to answer Glenn McGrath. Then you have Gopal saying Glenn
of course
McGrath.
It will be Glenn McGrath. Of course it will be.
And Priyam said Glenn McGrath. And also Gopal said he was the highest wicket taker back in 2007. No worries with that, Jack. You will have 2 more opportunities to open your account later in the show. We move on. It was wonderful. The first one, you definitely, I believe you loved it. And I'll just give you a hint that it's no more 2007 edition. We are going to ask in the next 2 questions. So we go on to the form. Jack, I think when I switched on to this slide, the first thing that came was David Warner batting right-handed. Give me a real-time reaction for yours when you saw that.
Well, I actually didn't watch the second game of the series against India. I didn't actually watch when they came back on to play after the rain delay. I switched it off because I thought Australia chasing 317 and 33 overs. I don't think that was going to happen. And in reality, it didn't happen. So I thought, I'll go to bed, watch the highlights. What's the worst that can happen? And then I see this with David Warner batting right-handed to Ashwin. And I think he got out to him, didn't he? And he didn't review or something.
Well, he hit a boundary, but he did hit a boundary, though, right-handed. So.
Yeah. And then I think he got out soon after Ashwin or something like that.
And was it clear inside edge? He didn't review that.
Yeah, didn't review it. So, that's the modern game, isn't it? The bat left-handed or right-handed. It's a good advantage. And we know David Warner can do that. We've seen him do it for years, switch hits and all that stuff. So I wasn't surprised. But, I think people coming into the game would be surprised. Hang on, he bats left-handed, but how come he can bat right-handed? Well, he can do that. He's David Warner. He can do that. So I wasn't surprised by it. It's the modern way and it's the modern game.
Yeah. So this is was it a bit concerning for you when you guys lost from 2-0 to 3-2 and then you carried on this form with the Indian series? Everybody was like, they're not going into this on a good run, but since you got that victory, everyone's like, now they're a bit of settled. So which side of the spectrum are you on? Are Australia settled, or do they still have some questions to answer before going into that Indian game?
It was a concern. It was concerning a little bit. I can't remember the last time Australia losing this badly heading into a World Cup, losing 5 on the trot. You got to remember that Australia didn't have Smith, Maxwell, Cummins, or Mitchell Starc in the team. So they chopped and changed their team in South Africa around, and they did the same in India. But then obviously they had Smith and Maxwell, and obviously Starc came back. And in South Africa, yes, in the first 2 games, they were the strongest team. South Africa were quite poor, and they weren't playing as well. And then South Africa came back, and Australia sort of lost the plot a little bit. But I feel like the win against India, the last ODI, would, get their confidence back. I think that's what we want to see from Australia. Bat well, get a good score, which they did. And India struggled a little bit. But in the context of the series was already wrapped up. So it didn't really matter if India won or lost. But for Australia, it was good for them to win the way they did, and for Glenn Maxwell to do well with the ball. So, yeah, there was a big talking point here. A lot of people were, writing off Australia's chances. but the tournament, it hasn't even started yet. So it's good to have this sort of bad run before the tournament starts, because you don't want to be playing your best cricket leading out to a World Cup, into a World Cup, because things can backfire quickly. So for Australia to have this sort of form slump that they did, when you lose, it keeps you honest, and you have to look at the areas to improve on. And in this losing streak of 5 games, Australia's batting was poor. A lot of batters got in, got out. They didn't build partnerships consistently. Their death bowling was poor. They were conceding big totals. They conceded 400 plus totals against South Africa and nearly against India in game 2, where Shubman Gill and Shreyas Iyer scored centuries in indoor. So that was a concern. But they started to get the things that they needed to improve on in the last game against India right, which was good. And even in the 2 warm-up games against the Netherlands and Pakistan recently, they're starting to, turn things around a bit. So it was a little bit concerning, but, you can't write off Australia. They always come good in World Cups, and they'll find a way. But many people see it differently, especially Australian fans. But I say that's a little bit overreacting, Wait until the tournament starts, then see what happens.
Right. And I think was that, like you said, before a mega tournament, you don't want to play your best cricket. And was that the reason why you were bowling Labuschagne 9 overs yesterday, David Warner warning, Steve Smith bowling, just to give Pakistan more confidence?
Well, I think Pat Cummins just did that to give them a bowl, because he didn't want to bowl and Mitchell Starc didn't want to bowl, because they've already, done enough bowling. So they don't want an injury or anything, because it's a warm-up match, right? It doesn't count towards anything. It's not even an international. So that's why they bowled them. But also to try them out, just in case they need a spinning option of a leg spinner in the World Cup. Obviously, you got Maxwell who can bowl off spin. You got Zampa, the leg spinner. But you want that other variety with Smith and Labuschagne, just in case something happens. So that's why they bowled them the way they did yesterday against Pakistan. And that's a bit of the risk with Australia not picking Ashton Agar and going with one specialist spinner in Adam Zampa. And then obviously you have Maxwell who can bowl 10 overs himself and take wickets, which is quite handy. But that's just the way that Australia have gone in with it. But hopefully, with that being said, the batting and the bowling, and, we know they're good in the field. We saw that yesterday against Pakistan. They had a few fumbles and drop catches, but overall they were pretty good in the field, and that's a good indicator. So I think they're starting to improve in all facets of the game, and hopefully they can click leading into a big game against India to kick off the campaign. And if they win against India, well, they've got South Africa and then Sri Lanka next after that. So if they can win 3 games up front, that will really set them up for their campaign. But things are starting to click, which is good. Hopefully it continues on that upward trajectory.
Yeah, Preetham, go ahead.
All right. And I would request you to hold your horses in terms of the fixtures. We have a part of that to be discussed as well. But before you go on to that, second trivia question out there for you, Jack. It's coming up right now, and even for the fans, it's time for you to get off the mark. And it is not 2007. It's something very close to that. But let's begin with the second trivia question. Aryan, over to you.
All right. So, Jack, we move approximately 4 years down the line. Who was the highest run getter for Australia in that 2011 World Cup, where you said that it was quite disappointing not reaching the semis? So, do you recall the name of the said batter?
Well, yeah, it was quite an interesting World Cup in 2011 for Australia. I think Brad Haddon was opening the batting, I think, with Shane Watson, I think. Well, obviously in that squad, you have Michael Hussey, Michael Clarke, Brad Haddon, Ricky Ponting, obvious names, of course. Steve Smith, yes, Steve Smith was a part of that World Cup. Obviously before he became one of the best batters in the world. Who was the leading run scorer? Well, Well, you could say it's Clark, you could say it's Ponting. They're obvious names because they've done well in World Cups before. But Ricky Ponting was getting towards the back end of his career. Michael Clark was in his prime at that time. He was really doing well in Test cricket in that 2011-12 period, scoring triple centuries and double centuries. Michael Hussey's always a good, consistent player. One of my favourite players growing up. Love watching Huss play. Shane Watson was good. Brad Haddon was also handy as well.
So what would be your pick? What would be your answer out of all the names you mentioned to us?
Well, out of all the names I mentioned, something has clicked. I'm not sure if it's correct or not when you reveal the answer, but do remember Brad Haddon, I think. I think Brad Haddon had an okay World Cup. I think it was...
So would that be your first pick? Would that be your first pick for the answer?
For my first choice, I would go with Brad Haddon. Something has clicked there.
Okay.
Don't know if I'm right or wrong. So
okay, I think we can show the answer now.
Shall we show him the answer instead of giving a second pick? I think he doesn't need a second pick for this. It is none other than Brad Haddon, who was the leading run scorer. So congratulations, Jack, you're off the mark, and you still have one more chance to make it two correct answers. Gopal says Brad Haddon. Sanjay says Mike Hussey. Unfortunately not. It was Brad Haddon, says Deepu. Rohan is back again, says Brad Haddon. And Priyam says Brad Haddon. So yes, most of them got it correct. Absolutely, Brad Haddon was the leading run scorer, and he was opening with Shane Watson at the top. So we move on. Fantastic, Jack. Yes, as I said, fixtures. This is one of the most favorite part for at least the both of us to discuss with the guest. That is, this is the place where we have lots of debates. And I'll start off with my question, as I always ask, is that let me know the game you're fearing the most. I hope you do not say 8th of August, but still, I am very eager to see 4th of November. It's the two teams facing each other once again at Ahmedabad, packed Ashes contest. Which is the game you're most fearing? Which is the opponent in this year's World Cup?
Well, to be honest, probably all of them. You want to win every game. The one I'm fearing the most, well, let's see. India's a big game in Chennai. Whoever wins that, they get off to a good start on their World Cup campaign. The game against England is also a danger game as well for Australia. So it's the rest of them, I think Australia would feel quite calm about. From a fan perspective, probably India and England are probably the most two feared games. But if I had to choose one, it would probably have to be against India for that first game of the tournament, because, whoever wins that, as I mentioned, it sets you up well for your campaign. If you lose, then you have a bit of a setback, but you can come back from a loss. It's not doom and gloom. You've still got 8 games after that.
Yeah.
So definitely the game against India for me is a danger game for Australia, because if they win that game, if they, cause a good victory there, and then you've got South Africa and Sri Lanka to come, and then the other games, then they'll definitely be on their way to the semis. So definitely the India match for me is a danger game.
All right. And which is the venue you think would suit you the most, and the venue that won't suit you so much out of the list that you can see on the screen? I hope you can see it. The venue that will suit you the most, and the one that you think might be a bit tough.
Well, my knowledge on Indian grounds is not that great, but from listening to commentators and that, and watching the IPL for a number of years, I think the venue that Australia are going to probably like the most, probably Bengaluru, maybe, because of the small boundaries. Yeah. It's usually a good pitch there, so they'll probably love batting there against Pakistan.
Without a doubt.
The other venues, against the Netherlands, they didn't have a great time of it in the Test match early in the year, Australia, Delhi. So you can probably mention that, but I don't know, probably Lucknow. I've heard of Lucknow being tough in the IPL, especially slow and turning a bit. Yeah. So I think those two games in South Africa and Sri Lanka there, I think are going to be some tough games for Australia. So I would go with Lucknow, probably because a lot of people have talked about that, especially in the IPL teams struggled to get the pace and get used to the conditions there. So I think that will be the one venue that Australia may struggle at. The other venues, I think they'll probably do okay at.
Yeah. And out here, as you said about Lucknow, here's a question about South Africa saying that Henrik Klaasen is in fantastic form and he will be against the same spinner, Adam Zampa, whom they smashed around 113 runs probably in his 10 overs. So
111.
111 runs in his 10 overs
It
figures.
was 113 for none. In the end.
113, yeah,
113.
I was correct, Aryan. So it was 113 against South Africa in Lucknow. So Lucknow, as we have witnessed in the IPL, Lucknow and Delhi will be ranked turners, but we may not know what ICC has in their plans. But these two games against South Africa and Sri Lanka will not be easy, is what I think. But the reason why you're not fearing New Zealand at Dharamsala, I would want to know, because probably you do not know much of the conditions. Is Dharamsala will provide a lot of swing. It will definitely provide a lot of swing for all the fast bowlers. You have Hazelwood, Stark. Similarly, they have Henry and Trent Bolt in case they bring in Saudi as well. So there will be a lot of swing. So fast bowlers will enjoy that game a lot. And the ground is also small compared to, just like if you love Bangalore, you will also love Dharamsala as well. So you're not fearing New Zealand at this moment on paper?
Well, Australian usually have a good record against New Zealand in one-day cricket overall, really. And New Zealand have gone through some change as well. I do remember Australia did play New Zealand at Dharamsala in the 2016 T20 World Cup, and Australia lost that match. But that was T20. This is 50 over. But no, it's such a wonderful ground in the Himalayas. You know, good backdrop there in Dharamsala. One of the most iconic grounds in the world.
Yep.
But yeah, Australia usually have a good record against New Zealand in one-day cricket. They usually tend to play well against them. It's always a big rivalry, you know, trans-Tasman rivalry across the ditch, as they say, between Australia and New Zealand. Yeah, you know, Australia should play well in that game. New Zealand tend to play well, so it should be a good game between both teams regardless. But overall, Australia do have a dominant record against New Zealand in one days. They tend to play well. And the teams played each other last summer here in Australia, and Australia won that series 3-0. So it just shows you where both teams are at. But it's a World Cup, anything can happen, but it should be a good game.
Yeah, and we see that you have 3 to 4 games at spinning conditions. For once, did you think about including Nathan Lyon into the ODI squad given his experience?
Well, he did play in the last World Cup, 2019. They played him. Yeah, Nathan Lyon, he's only played a handful of ODIs. No, I think Australia just probably went away from him. They probably said, you know, let's go with a different spinner in one-day cricket. Let's let Nathan Lyon be the main test spinner for Australia. Make him play as much as he can, obviously, for that longevity. So, yeah, you know, they've sort of gone away from him in one-day cricket, and they've gone down the route of Sampa and Agar and other spinners like Tavia Sangha recently. So, yeah, you know, you could always do that. You could always go back to that option. He's done well in T20 cricket line for the Sydney Sixers and the Big Bash. He does okay. But I think Australia just wanted to go in a different direction, really, and just pick other spinners who are more specialised in one-day cricket and especially in T20 cricket as well to have those skills. Whereas Nathan Lyon's more of a traditional test match off spinner. He bowls a good line and length and just bowls one variation, which he doesn't have many of, but he's very successful at doing it. So that's the reason behind why Australia have sort of gone away from Nathan Lyon when it comes to one-day cricket.
Understood, very much understood. And I think Australia, again, will be a minimum semis contender. is what we all feel. I think we all agreed on that. Brilliant session. Now we go to the playing 11. As I can see, we've got Warner, Mars, Smith, Labuschagne, Maxwell, Stoinis, Carey, and Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, and Zampa. So me and Jack, we both are thinking very much alike. Preetham, why is Sean Abbott in your team and not Josh Hazelwood? Just if you can shed a light. And then, but firstly, Jack, thoughts on the same playing 11 that I have? Pretty much settled.
Yeah, pretty settled. I think that's probably the 11 they'll go into the first game against India. It was pretty much the 11 against India in the last ODI. So I wouldn't change too much. Obviously, Josh Hazelwood and Adam Zampa come back because they didn't play in that last game, so they come back. So I don't think they should change too much. Obviously, Cameron Green's out. Stoinis comes in because Cameron Green at the moment is just struggling a little bit with bat handle.
But where's Stoinis? He hasn't played in the recent past.
Probably they just wanted to give Cameron Green an opportunity. That's why, I think. I don't think Stoinis is injured. I think they wanted to give Cameron Green the 2 warm-up games to get him back into some form, which is fair enough. And he scored a 50 against Pakistan yesterday.
He was good yesterday.
That's why they played Cameron Green ahead of Stoinis for those warm-up games. But,
and Jack, just like I have the playing 11 out here, and just a minute, no worries. Yeah, just like I have the playing 11 out here, which has seen Abbott. Because here's my question, and the reason why I went with him is that do you think Australia do not have a death bowler? Like, who would be your death bowler in case you go with Stark, Hazelwood, and Cummins?
Yeah, well, you know what you're going to get from Mitchell Stark because he's pretty good at the in terms of bowling Yorkers and that. Cummins and Hazelwood are pretty similar in terms of what they bowl. Sean Abbott, he has those tricks and variations. We've seen that in the Big Bash for a number of years, and he's been very successful. Yeah. So, yeah, but obviously Cummins and Hazelwood are, Hazelwood's been working on his T20 game and he's bowled death overs in T20 cricket, so he knows what to do there. Cummins, he's been around for ages, so he knows what he needs to do in terms of that. But yeah, well, that's pretty much the strong bowling attack that Australia have. And they've played a lot of cricket with each other. So whereas Sean Abbott hasn't really played much over the years, but he's starting to now. So they can go with that option. I think if they had to go with a choice, Cummins obviously plays because he's captain.
Yep.
I don't think he's going to leave himself out. So he will have to play. Then it will have to be Stark, and then it's either a bit of a decision between Abbott and Hazelwood probably for that one spot. So they could go either way with that, but we should wait and see. But Sean Abbott has definitely got those skills at the death. But I think Australia will back Hazelwood and Cummins to do the job, and they'll back Stark because he's pretty good.
All right. No worries with that. And any chance of having Josh Inglis is what Deepu says. By any chance, do you see him making the squad or the playing 11? And if yes, instead of whom?
Well, he played well against Pakistan yesterday, Josh Inglis. I was very impressed with how he played. He got 50. Be interesting to see what they do with that. Carey has struggled a little bit in terms of his form with the bat in one-day cricket. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but they're not really good. Inglis, he's early days in his one-day career. But obviously Carey will get the go because he's the first choice keeper, and then Inglis is the second choice. He's the backup, essentially, just in case something happens to Carey, if he breaks a finger or gets an injury or whatever. But it's definitely an option for Australia to have. Maybe play Inglis, probably replace either him with someone else in the batting lineup, like a Labuschagne or something like that. If you want something different, they can do that, Australia. They can have that option. So he doesn't have to play as a keeper, Inglis. So he can definitely find his way into the 11 if they want to do that, but I don't think they will. If he's going to play, he'll probably have to be the keeper. So it would depend on Alex Carey's form. If Alex Carey has a good World Cup, then he stays. If he doesn't, then they bring in Josh Inglis, I think, because he's
All right.
done
So
pretty
basically,
well.
he's a backup wicketkeeper for you as of now.
Essentially,
All
he's a
right.
backup keeper
Yeah.
because
All
they
right.
see Carey as the preferred option, and Inglis is there as just backup just in case an injury occurs. But they may
All right.
change it if Carey has a bit of a form dip in this World
Yeah.
Cup,
Yeah.
which is fair enough, and that's probably the right decision to make at the end of the day,
Agreed.
because
Agreed.
it's
All right.
because
No
it's
worries with that.
what you need
Yeah.
to do.
All right, Jack, and we move on to the next one. That is the third and final trivia question for the day for you, and even the third and the final trivia question of this marathon show as well from the past 10 days. So it's very special for you, Jack, and even for the fans. It's one last go for each and every one of you, even the fans. Let's get ready. Aryan, one final time for you. Let's get things rolling.
All right, the last question. Who was the second highest wicket taker for Australia in the 2019 World Cup? Everybody remembers the gold medalist. Everybody remembers the one who came first in the race, but nobody remembers the silver one. So we're trying to remember the silver medalist in terms of the wicket taking, Jack, who was the guy who was behind a said Mitch Stark and took the most wickets for you guys. 2019.
I think I got a good idea of this. I think, well, obviously, Mitchell Stark was on top, of course, as he was in that tournament. Hopefully,
Yeah.
again this year. Yeah, well, Hazelwood, Cummins, sorry, Josh Hazelwood didn't play in that World Cup in 2019. He was left out. So
You had Behrendorff.
Yes, Behrendorff played instead of Hazelwood in that World Cup for some reason. Well, Adam Zampa obviously played in that World Cup, obviously. And I think he had a pretty good World Cup as well. I can't remember off the top of my head, but his name rings a bell. I think he was the second leading wicket taker for Australia. I'm just going to go with Adam Zampa, a bit of a limb.
All
I'm
right.
going to go with Adam
So Adam
Zampa.
Zampa is your first attempt.
Yes, he's my first choice, Adam Zampa.
All right, no worries with that. We'll check the comments as well. Yes, we have received one of them and said the right answer. So Jack, over to you for the second attempt. It is not Adam Zampa.
Right, I thought it was. Well, it must be. Well, Pat Cummins.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jack. Just for the viewers, the first leading wicket taker is Mitchell Stark, but our question is the second highest leading wicket taker. It cannot be Mitchell Stark, and it isn't Adam Zampa. So over to you once again, Jack, and even for the fans.
Well, if it wasn't Adam Zampa, well, then it must be. Well, then it must be Pat Cummins, I think.
Maybe some
Okay.
all-rounders, just to give you various options. Any all-rounders you
I
have?
think, well, Marcus Stoinis played in that World Cup. I can't remember how many wickets he took. Glenn Maxwell did as well. So a couple of all-rounders there. Then you've got Pat Cummins.
So what would be your pick then out of the said names?
Well, I'm going to go with either one of those three I mentioned, either Stoinis or Maxwell or Cummins.
Okay.
Well,
And I would request you go with your gut.
all right. Well, I'm going to go with my gut instinct.
Go with your
I'm going to go with Pat Cummins. I don't know. I'm just going to go with Pat Cummins.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I feel like it wasn't
Okay,
Stoinis
so-
or Maxwell,
so-
but I could be wrong.
Okay.
Okay.
So
All
Pat
right, so
Cummins.
Pat
for me.
Cummins is your second choice, and just like in the first quiz, we said that you should definitely go with your guts, not with something else, because you might later on regret. That is the reason why I suggested you to go with your gut, and this time you are absolutely correct. It is none other than Pat Cummins, who was the second highest wicket taker. I'll go on to the comments. There were many of them who have predicted first in their first attempt. Yes, not surprisingly, Rohan said it's Pat Cummins. Josh Hazelwood, unfortunately, did not play in the 2019 World Cup. Gopal says Pat Cummins. And then the second attempt, Sanjay sir says Adam Zampa, unfortunately not. Deepu says Adam Zampa, no. Then goes to Pat Cummins is the second attempt, absolutely correct. Priyam says Pat Cummins, and he is also absolutely correct. So it is Pat Cummins. This was our final trivia show. I'm feeling a bit emotional in terms of this one because it has been a phenomenal. We have received a phenomenal response. It is the Darian in terms of the trivia questions.
Yeah. I mean, thanks to everyone. I mean, we really enjoyed forming the questions. It was always a challenge. We got to dig into some stats too, but it's a happy ending, as they say, to the trivia round. Thank you, Rohan. And we'll keep these questions are on YouTube, guys. You can just go to our respective channels and pull them out anytime you want. They are not going anywhere by any means.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think we can move on towards the last death phase, death overs. I must say the slog overs
Death
of
overs,
our
death
marathon.
face, absolutely. And the good thing is that Aryan, finally the sheet is filled. It is completely
Yay!
filled. Everyone has given
Yeah.
their predictions, and we're going to discuss. And the last and final one, which is jagged right in the bottom corner, it is India, England, Australia, and New Zealand. So you're sticking with Surinder Paji said the same, and Yadharth said the same, and anybody else who said the same? No. So you are the third person that is saying India, England, Australia, New Zealand. My question for you is, as we have always predicted, reason behind going for New Zealand and not for South Africa and Pakistan.
Well, New Zealand have been to 2 World Cup finals back to back, so they're more than capable of reaching the semis again if they have a good run at it. But that fourth spot, I think, is going to be a battle between New Zealand, South Africa, and Pakistan. Anyone can get into that fourth spot. I think the top 3 is pretty much locked up. They're the 3 strongest teams in this World Cup on paper. India, England, and Australia. So that fourth place is going to be up for grabs. But I've gone with New Zealand because they always punch above their weight in World Cups. The small cricketing nation that it's dominated by rugby, and cricket plays a small part in society in New Zealand, but they're passionate about their cricket. And for New Zealand, third time lucky. You're due for some luck after what happened in 2019. So that's why I went with New Zealand. I tend to support New Zealand from time to time when I'm not watching Australia. I just love the way they play their cricket. Bit of a soft spot for New Zealand.
The neighborly love. We can feel the neighborly love that you have for your
And
men.
even Sanjay says that an Aussie supporting New Zealand feels great, isn't it?
See, Jack. It would have, Pritham, it would have been weird. It would have been weird if he was supporting the Poms all of a sudden. But still, we can understand Jack going for New Zealand. The Trans-Tasman rivalry is more of a friendly one, should we say, in the cricketing world. And then, Jack, we can push on from this. The list is complete again, guys. It's not going anywhere. We'll put a photo out on our social media handles and then see which of these 12 predictions come true by the end of the league stage. Yeah, and Pritham, we can move ahead.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
Pritham,
We move on to the
yeah.
scorer and the wicket takers. Jack has picked once again, not surprising the batsman. Jack, if you can come up a bit close and count the number of times each and every guest has said Shubman Gill. I'll do it on your behalf. Aryan said Shubman Gill. Surendra Paji said Shubman Gill. Shankar sir said Shubman Gill. Deep said Shubman Gill. That's 4. Sanchit said Shubman Gill. 5. Viren said Shubman Gill. 6. Rohan, and now you. So 8 of them out of 10 people have said, if not 10, 12 people have said Shubman Gill. Isn't that surprising or not for you?
Not really, because he's very talented. Really, I was impressed with the way he batted in the ODI series against Australia. Especially that century he scored in game 2. He's just a talent, and I think in his first home World Cup, I think he's going to relish the opportunity to score runs for India and do well for them. So I won't be surprised. You got so many great batters in this World Cup, especially in that Indian team, with Kohli and Rohit Sharma. But I think Shubman Gill, he's something else. He's class, he's quality. Times the ball well, and he just has that confidence. So that's why I went with him as the leading run scorer. I think he's going to score a lot of runs.
And obviously, as we were speaking throughout this session, Jack, Mitchell Starc has some. I talked about this yesterday. So, does he have a reset button? Every 4 years, you switch it on, you switch it off. Once this World Cup gets over, you'll switch it off, and once the next one is nearing up, you'll switch it on. So, does he have a reset button? We want to know the secret. So, spill it out for us. What is it with Mitchell Starc?
I wish it was easier than that, just to press the button and then you reset. I think any player will take that. But no, I think Mitchell Starc just, loves playing in World Cups, and, he's a pretty good bowler for many years. He's probably one of the best Australian one-day bowlers that we've had, and probably one of the Test greats that we've had as well with the ball. He's taken 300 Test wickets and 200 ODI wickets, so he's done pretty well in his career. But I won't be surprised if he has a good tournament. Spin, yes, in India subcontinent's going to play a part, but your quick bowlers have to play a part as well. And I think Mitchell Starc, what I saw in that game against the Netherlands, yes, it was a warm-up match. Yes, it was against the Netherlands, who are not used to that sort of pace and from Mitchell Starc. But, if he gets that ball swinging and hooping like he did, he's going to be very dangerous. And if he gets those Yorkers right, he's going to be dangerous as well. So, I to go back to your question there, Iran, I don't think he has a button. I think he just gears himself up for these tournaments, because this is probably his last World Cup. He's 33. So the next one in South Africa in 27, he'll be 37. So he's definitely not playing until 37. So he will want to do well. And, he will want to win a World Cup for Australia. So that's all the motivation that he has to do well.
Agreed. And with Kohli and Starc, they have this big tournament players, man. I mean, every time a tournament nears up, there is just something different about them. And yes, Pritham, you can take it away now.
Definitely. We'll come back to this slide at the end as well. I'll let you know why. But moving on to the winners, Jack, not surprisingly, you went with Australia. We both are Indians. We went with India. But I would want to ask you, how confident are you in this year's World Cup? Away from home, in Indian conditions, you will definitely have a lot of players having the IPL experience as well. How confident are you to lift the trophy for the sixth time hitting it out of the fence?
Out of 1 to 10, on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, out of 1 out of 10 scale, probably maybe an 8.
Okay.
Australia, they've got a good squad. All the players have played IPL just about. They know these conditions. Not many host nations of the World Cup win the home tournament. There's only been 3 teams that have won. That's another trivia question. Let's see if people can get that in the chat. Who are the 3 countries to have won the home World Cup when they've hosted it? So I'm going to turn the trivia questions back onto you guys.
It's
Jack
the last
asking
3.
it to us, last 3 basically, 2011, 15, and 19. But still, it's even to all the fans. If you can answer this, who was the 3 teams that hosted the World Cup and eventually won that the same year? If you could answer them, we have answered it. I hope, if in case you've heard it, then you can get guess that. But in case you haven't heard it, please mention the 3 teams who did that. But yes, Jack, without mentioning, were we both correct in our answers?
Yeah, you're pretty spot on. So the last 3 World Cups: India 2011, Australia 2015, England 2019. So you have a look at the World Cup overall. Not many teams have won at hosting. So anyone could win this World Cup in India. So out of all the teams, they've got a good chance if they can play well. But coming back to Australia, I think everyone's confident. Knowing Australia's history in World Cups, everyone expects Australia to do well. So hopefully they can come back after the disappointment of 2019 at that semi-final at Edgbaston. That was an absolute horrible match to watch because they absolutely got pumped with England. So hopefully they can, use that as motivation. But definitely, Australia definitely going to make it to the semis at least. Whatever happens, happens. And I think everyone will be satisfied. If you make it to a semi-final of a World Cup, you've done well. They're very hard to win. So we shall see. But I'm confident deep down that we can lift it for the 6th time. It would be nice if someone else different would win this year, like a South Africa or New Zealand. That would be great. But we have to wait and see. But it would have been foolish of me not to go with Australia. I had to go with Australia.
It's for Indian fans. For Indian fans, let me clarify what Jack just said in IPL terms. He's saying that I'm a Punjab fan. Pritham is a Delhi fan. So he's like, it would be nice for Punjab and Delhi to win the IPL, but you cannot count Chennai Super Kings out of the contention. So that's what basically Jack said in the IPL terms. So that made it easy for you all.
No worries with that. So Jack, as we said that you are the final guest this time, so we will definitely bring in a few extra things out here. So we have asked the guests, and I'll bring this question out here. We have asked the guests if could write one-liner as to how much they enjoyed the past 10 days and their favorite guest. And that's the reason why I was keeping this slide open. And we will read one guest at the time. And here it is. So Gopal said, wonderful session, guys. Really enjoyed for the past 10 days. Every guest were awesome. But for him, the favorite was Viren and Rohan. Jack, just to let you know, Viren was the third last. That is, he was from all the way from Sri Lanka. And Rohan is just beside you, all the way from India, representing South Africa. So that's the first guest opinion. Then you have Sanjay saying, thoroughly enjoyed the show over the past 10 days. All guests were knowledgeable with great love for the game. Paji, Mr. Sankar, Jack, you as well, and even Rohan yesterday needs special mention. So Surendra Paji is the third person just next to me. He represented England, if I'm not incorrect, Aryan.
Birmingham. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, he represented England, Team England. Shankar sir represented Netherlands, was it?
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. Shankar sir represented Afghanistan. Then you had, he said, Jack to you, none other than Australia. And Rohan, he represented South Africa. And then it's Rohan himself writing it, fabulous stuff, great format and lovely guest. So he's saying it for all, and may the best team win. So it's for you and me. It's India and Australia. And we loved it, to be very honest. Thoroughly loved it. Thank you so much, Jack. We'll come to the conclusion very soon. But how much was it for you to be part of this marathon show? I want to hear it from you, Jack.
That was great. It's always great talking to like-minded people about cricket because people can understand what you're talking about. Some of my friends don't understand cricket at all. They just look at me confused and say, "What? What'd you say?" So it's good to come on and talk with you guys tonight, and everyone in the chat. I hope you enjoyed it as well. So it's always good, and to talk cricket. That's why we do this, because we love it. And we're passionate, and we're cricket tragics deep down inside. I know I am. Can't stop thinking about it. So that's why we do it. But it's been great fun and thoroughly enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you, Jack.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jack.
Absolutely with that. And probably we have one more. Yes, there you go. Deepu says, thoroughly enjoyed the marathon, loved everyone's knowledge about the game. But I enjoyed watching Jack, Sandy Paji, Viren, and Rohan. So Jack, Sandy Paji, Viren, Rohan, very common names, but No disrespect to the other 6 as well. Everybody was fantabulous. Thank you so much to even you guys
Wait,
who are writing in the comments. Yes, Aryan,
Before
over to you.
going, okay. There's a question here. There's a question. What about us, Preetham? Where are we? I mean, we hosted for the 10 days. No one's talking about us. What happened, guys? Come on. This is like you showed us all. You're bowling out swingers, and suddenly you bring one in, and you've knocked our stumps over. Wow, well played. But jokes apart, it was
Jokes
really
apart,
nice.
absolutely.
And
I hope.
although you didn't,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Go ahead.
carry on. Yeah. So thank you, Rohan. So yeah, Preetham, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Rohan, for that. And before we go to the conclusion, final question from one of the fans. Priyam says India, Australia, England. So he hasn't mentioned his fourth team. No worries with that. But Stokes likely to miss the game tomorrow. Is that a big blow for England, or will they manage? Do you think, Jack?
It's definitely he's one of those big players for them. Obviously, he scored 180 odd recently against New Zealand, and he's coming back out of retirement. We all know what he did in the last World Cup, the accidental deflection off his bat of the ball to the boundary for 4, and that's a famous moment in World Cup history. But yeah, he's definitely going to be a big player for England. They've got all bases covered. England, they've got depth, so they can easily replace him. And he should be available for the remaining of the tournament. We hope, because we want to see the best players playing, and we don't want to see them suffering injury. So hopefully we see Stokes back, if not the first game, but hopefully for the remaining games that England play, and hopefully the final if they make it.
All right,
No,
and
no,
like
no,
we
no.
always, yeah, like we always ask each and every guest the final question before we go into conclusion. Your X factor for Australian side in this Cricket World Cup 2023.
Oh, my X factor. Well, you got so many good players that Australia have. They can all be match winners on their day. But if I have to go with one X factor, I think he's pretty obvious. I think it's going to be the big show. It's going to be Glenn Maxwell. I think he's going to be an X factor in this World Cup. Really looking forward to him playing this reverse sweeps and other shots that he plays. He's definitely going to be the X factor, obviously with the bat and with the ball now, being Australia's second spin choice. So, it's good to see him back from that horrible injury that he had recently with his leg. So good to see him back in form and getting runs at wickets. And I think he's going to be a big X factor for Australia in this World Cup, and he's going to do some good things, hopefully.
And you mentioned about Maxwell. RCB fans definitely, like Rohan, will be very happy listening to his name. But Deepu says Cameron Green for him, but he doesn't make your playing 11, which is definitely
He's not
something
going to
to be
get many
seen.
games.
Yeah, but Aryan, shall we move on to the conclusion for the one final time of this marathon?
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
go ahead and finish it off with a helicopter shot, and whichever shot you want to call it.
Absolutely. I wish I could, but thank you each and every one of you. But before that, thank you so much, Jack, for being part of this marathon show. Day 10 ends with a bang. It's Australia. We kickstart ICC Cricket World Cup 2023 from tomorrow, sharp at 2 p.m. Indian Standard Time. The toss will take at 1:30 p.m. No opening ceremonies. I must tell you, there is no opening ceremonies for this tournament. It's going to be a closing ceremony, is what I'm going to hear. But thank you so much, each and every one of you. Here's the closing ceremony for us. For one final time, each and every fan for you who have definitely taken your time and been with us throughout the past 10 days. It has been a wonderful, wonderful marathon session. Hopefully, we will take this forward in the IPLs as well, and even in the knockout stages, definitely. But thank you, each and every one of you, for being part of this marathon show for the past 10 days. It has been a wonderful show, and we have been forever grateful for that. Till then, it's one goodbye, one final goodbye. Good night to you, Jack, but it's not good night to us this time. It is a very good evening to us. Till then, bye-bye, take care, good night, and let's enjoy the Cricket World Cup starting from tomorrow.